Who is this that speaks blasphemies? Who can forgive sins but God alone?
Yeah, that is, it's the ultimate question of authority, right?
Yeah.
And the moment it gets asked, the entire atmosphere in that room just shifts.
Totally. It goes from curiosity to like this deadly, serious political tension.
Exactly.
And that actually sets up the biggest aha moment of this entire deep dive for you listening right now. Because today we are going to see how what looks like, well, just a simple dinner with the tax collector wasn't just a meal.
No, not at all.
It was a calculated, highly visible refusal to honor the power of religious gatekeepers, and it set the absolute stage for a capital religious offense. I mean, we are looking at a masterclass in challenging the establishment, and it all happens in just a few astonishing scenes.
Right, so our mission today brings us to a single really dense chapter of text, Luke chapter 5. And the progression here is fascinating because, it is entirely about this escalating display of authority. The narrative begins out on a fishing boat, surrounded by the working class, and it literally ends with a slammed door on an old religious order.
And to really understand this ultimate clash of authority, we kind of have to start where this authority was first established. And it wasn't in a temple. Yeah. It wasn't in some grand palace in Jerusalem. It was in a commercial workplace on the water.
Right. So we need to ground ourselves in the precise geographic and economic reality of the text. The setting here is the Lake of Gennesaret,
which most people probably know as the Sea of Galilee.
Exactly. Yep. The Sea of Galilee. It's an inland freshwater sea, roughly 13 miles long and 8 miles wide.
Wow. Okay.
And geographically, it sits quite dramatically in the Jordan Rift Valley, so it's some 700 feet below sea level.
Which is pretty intense. I mean, 13 miles by 8 miles is a substantial body of water. And because of that crazy elevation drop, the climate is warm and the labor is really intense.
Oh, absolutely.
We have to keep in mind that this wasn't just, guys with a single rod and reel hoping to catch dinner.
Right, this is not a weekend fishing trip. First century fishing on this lake was a complex commercial enterprise. It was not subsistence work.
Right.
The text introduces us to Simon, along with James and John, and they run a full partnership. So they have heavy equipment, specialized nets, hired labor.
Which means serious overhead.
Exactly. Running a commercial fishing operation in antiquity meant carrying significant overhead. You had to maintain the boats, repair the nets, pay the crew, and likely pay Roman taxes on your catch as well.
So the real business.
Yes. So when the text tells us they spend an entire night fishing and catch absolutely nothing, the stakes are severe.
Right.
Losing a night's catch was a genuine, painful economic loss.
Right. It meant laboring to the point of total exhaustion just to walk away with, like a negative balance sheet.
Completely.
Which really makes the opening action of this chapter so striking. So Jesus is on the shore and he's teaching, but the crowd is pressing in so intensely he actually has to escape them.
Yeah, they're practically pushing him into the water.
Exactly. So he steps into Simon's boat. He asks to be pushed offshore, and he uses the hull of the boat as a floating stage, which is brilliant because, well, the water acts as a natural acoustic amplifier, right?
Allowing him to project his voice to this massive crowd on the shore.
But then, after he finishes speaking, the scene shifts from public teaching to a demonstration of absolute dominion.
Yeah, he turns to Simon and tells him to drop the nets in deep water.
And Simon protests, which honestly is the only logical response for a professional fisherman.
Of course.
They do their work at night in the shallows, not during the day in deep water. He basically says, look, we've fished all night and caught nothing. Like, he knows the lake, but he complies anyway.
And the result is this massive miracle. The haul of fish is so enormous that the heavy commercial nets literally begin to tear.
They actually have to signal frantically for help.
Yeah, and 2 boats are filled so high they nearly sink under the sheer weight of the catch.
Okay, let's unpack this because, frankly, I'm confused. If I am running a commercial fishing business on the brink of economic ruin, and some guy just showed me how to max out my entire fleet's capacity in 5 minutes, I am hiring him on the spot as my CFO.
Right, you'd be thrilled.
I'm throwing a party. We are going into business together. But Simon Peter's response to this incredible windfall is not enthusiasm. It is absolute terror. He falls to his knees and tells the guy to leave. That makes zero psychological sense for a businessman. What are we missing here?
We are missing the terrifying reality of encountering raw, unexplainable power.
Okay.
This is a deliberately unsentimental recruitment scene. If we look through the text's exact lens, Simon Peter isn't calculating profits.
No.
His response to this dominion over the natural world is terror. and a profound sense of self-condemnation. He literally collapses at Jesus' knees, and his exact words are, "Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, Lord."
Wow.
He recognizes a fundamental, terrifying gap between his own human frailty and the authority that just commanded the depths of the lake.
So he wants distance from that power because it exposes him. But Jesus doesn't depart. Instead, he recruits him, along with James and John, right there among the tearing nets and sinking boats. He tells them they will be catching men.
Yes, that's the pivot.
But before we follow them from the water's edge into the city, I have to ask you, listening right now, what happens when breaking a medical quarantine is also a deliberate shattering of social and religious law?
That is the exact tension the text immediately thrusts us into.
Yeah.
Because Jesus moves into a city and encounters a man covered in leprosy. And to really grasp the gravity of this moment, we have to look at the legal mechanisms explicitly stated in the text and the surrounding culture.
Because it wasn't just a sickness.
No, leprosy in the ancient world functioned as a severe legal status as much as a medical one.
It was an identity of total isolation. Like Leviticus mandated that sufferers had to live entirely apart from society. Yeah.
They had to announce their condition publicly, often shouting to warn people away, and they remained in a constant state of ritual uncleanness. And crucially, the law dictated that any contact with a leper made the person who touched them ritually unclean as well.
Right.
It was essentially a contagious social death.
And so this man falls on his face and asks to be made clean. Now, Jesus doesn't just speak a word from a safe distance, which he could have done.
Right, he could have just stayed back.
But he reaches out and touches him. By touching this man, Jesus is committing a scandalous violation. He breaks both social and religious law simultaneously.
Wow.
And instantly the disease vanishes.
So he has just shattered the medical and legal quarantine of a leper with a single touch.
He has.
But the religious establishment could still argue that was just, I don't know, a rogue, unexplained medical anomaly.
Yeah.
To truly challenge their power, he had to go after something they couldn't see, the spiritual law itself.
Exactly, and that brings us to the paralyzed man. Yeah, so the scene moves to a house, and it is packed. We get this incredible image of these determined friends trying to get a paralyzed man to Jesus. But they can't get through the door, so they go up to the roof.
Right, and the architecture of the region grounds this scene perfectly. Standard Galilean domestic architecture featured flat clay tile roofs that were accessible by exterior stairs.
Oh, that makes sense.
So these friends carry a paralyzed man up those exterior stairs, and they literally dismantle the clay tiles. They break through the ceiling, raining debris down on the crowd below to lower him right in front of Jesus.
So what does this all mean? It's like someone walking past the Supreme Court, ignoring the justices entirely, and rewriting the Constitution themselves.
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, the Pharisees are the justices. They have the exclusive right to interpret the law. But when this paralyzed man is lowered down, the physical healing is almost an afterthought. Jesus looks at him and first says, "Your sins are forgiven."
Right.
By forgiving sins, Jesus isn't just breaking a rule. He's claiming he wrote the rule book.
And the political tension snaps into place immediately because of who is sitting in that room. The text specifies that Pharisees and teachers of the law have come from every village of Galilee, from Judea and from Jerusalem.
Wait, from Jerusalem? Traveling from Jerusalem to Galilee is a multi-day journey on foot.
It is.
That implies major institutional resources are being deployed.
Yes, it signals organized institutional surveillance. They are there specifically to watch him, and they instantly catch the blasphemy.
Because claiming to forgive sins belongs exclusively to God.
Exactly. Making that claim as a man is a capital religious offense.
And Jesus doesn't back down.
Not at all. Jesus doesn't deny what he's doing, and he doesn't claim they misunderstood his theology. He doubles down.
Yeah.
He uses the physical healing of the paralyzed man, commanding him to pick up his bed and walk as tangible, undeniable evidence of his unseen authority to forgive sins.
And the crowd is completely astonished. They glorify God, but the Pharisees remain furious. You can practically feel the oxygen leave the room.
Absolutely.
The question of this man's authority has just escalated dramatically, and it's about to move from a private, crowded house straight into the heart of the Roman economic machine. We go from the religious watchers in a house to Levi sitting at a tax booth.
Right, and tax collectors in Roman-administered Galilee worked under a highly specific and often brutal franchise system.
How did that work exactly?
Well, Rome auctioned the right to collect tolls and duties to the highest bidder.
Yeah.
These collectors would then recover their upfront fee, plus whatever massive profit margin they wanted, by charging the local populace above the official rate.
So it's an inherently predatory system.
Completely.
And Galilee at this moment isn't just dealing directly with Rome. Galilee sat under the client rule of Herod Antipas, a son of Herod the Great. He governed entirely under Roman sanction, and ultimately, he answered to the emperor.
Exactly. So Levi, sitting at this toll booth, means he is likely collecting road or border tolls on goods moving around Antipas' territory. This makes Levi simultaneously an agent of Roman economic extraction and a collaborator with the puppet king. He represents the financial bleeding of his own people.
To the locals walking past his booth every single day, he is the physical embodiment of occupation and extortion.
Yes.
And to observant Jews, he was even more isolated, he was morally compromised by his occupation, and he was ritually unclean from his constant daily contact with Gentiles and their currency.
And yet, Jesus walks right up to this agent of the empire, this ritually unclean collaborator, and simply says, "Follow me."
Wow.
And Levi leaves everything, the booth, the money, the lucrative franchise rises, and follows him.
Just walks away.
Just walks away. Then Levi throws a massive banquet for Jesus at his house.
Man.
And the guest list is a large company of tax collectors and others. It's Levi's entirely disreputable circle.
Naturally, the Pharisees and their scribes are watching them.
Of course they are.
They complain to Jesus' disciples, asking why he is eating and drinking with tax collectors and sinners. But we have to understand the cultural weight of what is happening here. This isn't just a complaint about, bad table manners.
No, not at all. Table fellowship in the ancient Near East was power. The Pharisees are the recognized interpreters of the Torah and the gatekeepers of community respectability.
Right.
So their complaint carries real social force. In this culture, who you eat with publicly signals whose authority you recognize and who you validate.
So by choosing to eat with Levi's network of outcasts, Jesus is enacting a visible, deliberate refusal to honor the Pharisees' gatekeeping power.
Exactly. He is completely bypassing their social taxonomy. He doesn't even try to appease them. He tells them directly, "I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance."
He essentially tells the religious elite that a doctor doesn't spend time with healthy people, he goes to the sick.
It is a profound public rebuke delivered right inside a tax collector's house, which is a place the Pharisees wouldn't even dare to enter for fear of contamination.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Jesus doesn't just defend his dinner companions. He actively corners his critics using parables.
Yeah, the metaphors are brilliant.
He talks about how you don't tear a piece from a new garment to patch an old one because the fabrics won't match and you'll just ruin the new cloth.
Right.
Then he talks about how you don't put new wine into old wineskins because the fermenting new wine will expand and burst the old brittle skins, destroying both the wine and the skins.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Luke has built this entire chapter so that each distinct scene escalates the exact same question.
Which is?
What kind of authority does this man actually hold?
Yeah.
It moves from mastering the natural world on the commercial fishing boat, to overriding legal and medical quarantine with the leprous man, to claiming divine prerogative with the paralytic, and finally to dismantling social and religious hierarchies at the tax booth.
And the final sting in the tail of this chapter brings all that tension together perfectly. It is such a sharp psychological observation about human nature and power.
It really is. Jesus delivers this final line in Luke 5:39. "No man having drunk old wine immediately desires new, for he says, the old is better."
Wow.
He's telling his critics that they already know the answer to the question of his authority. They see the undeniable power. They see the healings.
Yeah, they literally just watched a paralyzed man walk.
Exactly. They just refuse to accept it because they are too heavily invested in the old order. The old wine benefits them.
They prefer their gatekeeping. They prefer their strict social taxonomy because it keeps them at the top.
And that last verse lands like a heavy door closing. Jesus openly acknowledges that the people most invested in the old religious order will never voluntarily embrace the new one.
Before we wrap up, think about this. We often view historical revolutions as starting with weapons, massive armies, or violent uprising. But if we look closely at this text, the total dismantling of a centuries-old social and religious hierarchy didn't start with a sword. It started with who was invited to dinner. It makes you wonder what modern power structures are vulnerable to nothing more than a radical change in social invitations.
That is a fascinating way to look at it.
All right, you've been listening to us unpack this incredible chapter, and now we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below with your thoughts on today's historical drama. If you were standing there in that first century crowd, would you have recognized the terrifying authority in that fishing boat? Or would you have instinctively sided with the religious gatekeepers trying to maintain order?
It's a tough question when you really put yourself in their shoes.
Let us know what you think. And hey, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really helps us keep bringing you these historical breakdowns. Also, do not forget to check the description below.
We've got some great resources down there.
Yes, we've got exclusive links to our sources, full transcripts of the show, and some excellent further reading if you want to explore the history of Galilee and these texts even further. Find out what happens in the next chapter as the Pharisees' fury boils over, and this very charge of speaking blasphemies continues its deadly escalation toward the exact accusation that will ultimately get him killed.